Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar. We'll just give the latest attendees a minute or two to find their way into the room, and I hope everything is working perfectly with sound and visuals. And take a look around, maybe just introduce you quickly in the chat to feel welcome here. So we'll start in a minute's time or in a few seconds here. So let's just have the latest people arrive. Yeah, I think we're good to go. So first of all, welcome to this webinar about AI, well-being, students. I'm really excited to be here. I am the CEO of a Danish company called Student Pulse. And yeah, actually we have a pretty important announcement to make because for the last Friday, we received approval of a application to do even further investments into our AI capacity in Student Pulse. So I'm really excited about that. I'll be sharing a little bit about how we as a tech vendor out of Denmark wants to invest and improve the capabilities of our AI model to support students and provide interventions to students. So I'm really excited about that. But today is also about Jennifer, who is a assistant professor from Ontario Tech University of the Faculty of Education. She's done great research on technology, interventions, machine learning, AI, and how we can support students, and both the potential benefits of it, but also the harming effects of, the risks of artificial intelligence within the education. So with that said, I just want to welcome you, and I'm very glad that you're here. I'm from Denmark, and as you know, Jennifer is from Canada. So there's a little bit of a space between us, but we will see if we can make a great webinar and make all the tech work here. So if you have any problems, feel free to just hit the chat. So you can use the chat, as I said there, and you're also, if you click on the handouts tab within the chat, you have the opportunity to download all the slides that we present today and go back and forth if you wish to, and you can ask questions. So if you ask any kind of question, please do. My assistant here will mark them, and me and Jennifer will be able to come back to the questions at the end of the session in the QA part. So really just put in questions and engage. So the webinar today, first of all, Jennifer will be talking about some of the real-world examples that she's had in her practice, and also some of the research that they're conducting within AI, well-being, and students particularly. So she will be covering that. So that will be, for the most part of the webinar, Jennifer will be on. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we as a tech vendor want to use and incorporate machine learning and AI algorithms into our platform to support students, and a little bit about the history of the company in terms of where did we start and where do we see the potential benefit of AI. And the last part will be, I'll briefly talk about the European Union and the AI Act and the implications for educational institutions on, where's the do's and don'ts, where do you have to comply with European Union regulation to ensure that it's safe. And there's some great work already done there, so I'll just briefly go over it. It's rather complex, but I'll cover the most important parts of that. So I think that was the introduction for today. And with that, I just want to welcome Jennifer on the webinar here. And we have been working together for a bit now, both preparing for the webinar, but also on some of the research that we'll be doing together. So please come on stage, Jennifer, and see if all the tech things are working here.
Hello, hi.
Welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon. That's great, thank you.
So you just hit it. The word is yours. The stage is yours.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar. We'll be exploring today artificial intelligence and post-secondary student mental health. I think we've all noticed that there's been a flurry of conversation around the advancements of artificial intelligence, especially in the areas of education, healthcare, the workforce, and overall humanity. But our agenda for today is really just to look at the impacts of AI on post-secondary student mental health in particular. And that's both the institutions, but as well as students and faculty as well. As a researcher and a licensed mental health professional, I am interested in the impacts of AI on communities, on individuals, and in the field of education. We've been researching at the lab, at the Mental Health and Digital Age Lab at the Faculty of Education, the impacts of AI and the dual nature of AI. Because we know that with technology, there's often a dual nature where it can bring both risks and benefits. And artificial intelligence, which has the capacity to match human capabilities, especially in the areas of problem solving, language processing, pattern detection, and ultimately human learning, we know that it could present risks, but also benefits for students. We want to look at the risks and benefits when it comes to post-secondary students' mental health. And we know that many students that are in post-secondary institutions across the globe, and this is international, often research will show that students will struggle, especially in first year. 60% of students may show mental health symptoms, and up to 75% may report moderate to severe psychological distress. Often depression and anxiety rates are the highest reported, so either stress or anxiety, and sometimes up to 6 to 7 times higher than the general population. A Canadian study that was performed by the National College Health Assessment found that 95% of post-secondary students felt overwhelmed and fatigued, and up to 83.7% experienced anxiety, 86% reported depression, and 81% felt lonely. Those numbers really tell us we need to take action within our post-secondary institutions. However, accessing supports can often be difficult. First, we see often that less than half of students in need actually seek or receive the professional help that they need. And there's a number of reasons reported. That might be due to anxiety, unsure about the system, stigma, time constraints, or even limited counseling center capacity. However, across the globe, we have seen since 2008, the number of students talking more often about mental health problems have been increasing. Unfortunately, as students reach out for supports and our numbers grow in post-secondary institutions, it does create high caseloads. A report in the United States found that the average annual caseload for a typical full-time college counselor is 120 students, and sometimes that reached up to 300 students. That is a very high caseload, especially if those caseloads involve moderate to severe mental health problem. And this really can contribute to risk burnout, vicarious traumatization, and workplace stress for faculty and staff. Many post-secondary institutions are trying to adapt to an increased demand for services, but also an increased demand for more severe services for more severe mental health problems, and in a timely manner. Overall, looking at the literature and environmental scan of post-secondary institutions, we found that they were in need of increased supports, professionals ranging in specialization, so those that could treat different types of mental health conditions such as grief, depression, or anxiety. Also in need of crisis supports, for example, for suicide intervention, culturally appropriate supports, reducing stigma, timely intervention, and holistic prevention measures. So measures that reached all students and were more prevention-based instead of intervention-based. The American Psychological Association, along with many other psychological associations in the last 2 years, put out a call to action, asking post-secondary institutions to think outside of the box when it comes to supporting students. We need more help, so let's think outside of the box, was the call to action. They discussed things such as peer counseling or training faculty to be aware of signs and symptoms and act as first responders. Our research team was interested in the role of AI as part of that call to action. Could we be using AI as a way to address the caseloads, the accessibility, and the individualization that was needed for students? We did a review of the literature and looking at what some of the leading experts were saying around the impacts of AI, the potential use of AI. And 4 main areas kept coming up. One was increased accessibility for students, personalized interventions, data-driven insights, and the ability to help reduce stigma. And there are numerous examples out there of what post-secondary students are doing across the globe with AI. Some are using artificial intelligence for learning supports. For example, some are using virtual therapists, chatbots, personalized recommendations that are being created for students, the ability to do early detection and intervention, and multilingual and culturally sensitive support as well. We looked at how artificial intelligence in our research, the aspects of AI could actually match the psychological needs of students when it comes to mental health. And I just provided a few examples here. I won't go over all of them, but just to give a few examples. One is, students, or anyone really for that matter, going through a mental health struggle really needs validation. Validation is key from a therapeutic stance. And so what we see with AI is through pattern recognition and language processing, being able to identify keywords in speech and therefore provide actually validations based on what students say or write. Or for example, number 3, often to help us feel better and de-escalate, we need to feel that we're not alone. And there are different AI technologies that can help students connect to others, see what others have written, what their experiences are like, and how it's similar to theirs. So there is the capacity here for artificial intelligence to match the psychological needs of students in distress. And some of those examples, we do see that AI is being used within academic settings. And we know that if students' sense of self-esteem, self-efficacy is increased through effective learning, that could support their mental health. Although there have been risks, presented there as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. An example here was from Walden University that created a learning system called Julian. And Julian could help support students in their learning. So very personalized, helping them understand the content. And some preliminary research on Walden is indicating that by supporting students' individualized learning journey, it's really supporting their wellness as well. Georgia State University looked at AI-powered chat box that could help students with their learning outcomes. And they were finding the chat box that they were using were highly effective in improving student retention. Although these studies, we do need to do more longitudinal studies to see the overall impacts on student well-being and if these are lasting results. Another area that AI is really helping when it comes to mental health for post-secondary students is screening and intake for very stretched systems. So as we said, we see high caseloads, we see more students that may need help, and it's hard to get to all students and do proper screening for those that are at risk and be able to conduct effective intakes. So artificial intelligence may play a role here in being able to optimize university services or college services by doing those screenings and intakes. For example, Dalhousie University in Canada is creating an AI mental health app that can actually help detect those that are really struggling in mental health distress, and then actually be able to connect them to supports right away, so timely supports. And we know that's really important for mental health, is not having to wait where maybe symptoms will increase. And so timely supports and being able to assess quickly, that is important. So this is an app that is being created by Dalhousie. Here at Ontario Tech University, myself with Dr. Collins and research team created a chat box that was developed during COVID. It was called COVID Connects, to help people connect to others who may be experiencing the same things they were going through. And that really addressed that psychological need of not feeling alone and being in this with other people. There's also some researchers and post-secondary institutions actually looking at chatbots to help with combating loneliness. So if you remember the previous slide, there was, I think it was approximately 86% of students in post-secondary institutions report feeling lonely. So is there the capacity for AI to assist in this area around loneliness? One example here was research at Stanford and the University of Oregon. We're looking at Replica, which is an AI companion that assists with feelings of loneliness and makes others feel quite comfortable. They can change the avatar. Some have reported it as life-changing, where others, as we all know, that sort of double edge of technology, have indicated it not so effective and feelings of uneasiness when using it. So that's something that needs to be explored further, is that feeling of uneasiness when we're using such AI as this. There's also chatbots that have been created for anxiety and depression. They can provide accessible support, give guidance, go over coping strategies with individuals, tailored recommendations, which are great because people really need individualized supports, right? A one size does not fit all for everybody. We really need more tailored. And what we're seeing with AI is because of the pattern recognition and the language processing, that it can really help do more personalized, tailored mental health treatment plans and coping strategies. TESS is an application, chatbox application that was created to support college students with anxiety and depression. And there has been a study already, for example, completed on TESS by Fulmer et al. In 2018. And they found that students who were using this had a significant reduction in anxiety symptoms when they had unlimited access to TESS. And the group with 2-week daily check-ins experienced significant depression symptom reduction as well. However, again, it's unclear if these results are sustained over a long period of time. Student Pulse, which you'll hear about tonight, was also part of our environmental scan and our literature review, another integration of AI. And this is looking at giving students opportunities to do check-ins and then connect students with supports right away. And this also connects to those psychological needs around immediate supports. And we also know frequent check-ins are really important. And this really came out during the pandemic, that check-ins are important for people. And when we have opportunities to do check-ins, regular check-ins, we do see a decrease in mental health symptoms, and distress. So while AI-driven mental health interventions show promise, it's also crucial to acknowledge their limitations and set realistic expectations. There have been concerns expressed, especially when it comes to mental health, from experts in the field, leading psychologists and therapists, organizations such as the American and Canadian Psychological Associations, and ethics and privacy advocates as well. Just concerns around ethical dilemmas, over-reliance on the technology, biases that might come up, and also loss of human connection. And one thing we'll hear more and more about as we move into the future is this concept around, it's great to use AI as a way to enhance supports, to enhance mental health. But when we start getting into the area of replace, this is where those concerns of over-reliance and loss of human connection really come into play. And some of the research does look at the limitations when it comes to AI, the need for a human ear. There's a number of practitioners that have pointed out the limitations of AI when it comes to therapeutic settings or mental health settings. So for example, the ability to provide authentic empathy. We understand that empathy, to have genuine empathy, we need to connect to something in ourselves that knows that feeling. So the question is, can AI replicate that? We base our empathy on our own experiences of what people are telling us and connecting to that and being vulnerable. There's also concern around compassion, the ability to read non-verbal cues. Also, having concerns around, best practice, looking at evidence-based practices that can be used. So AI is not a substitute for the expertise and personalized care provided by human psychologists and healthcare professionals, but it can be optimized and used to enhance those services and supports for individuals. And we already see that. We see a number of post-secondary students, for example, really turning to mental health apps. I always say it's the new de facto therapist. They may not come to therapy on a regular basis. They may not be able to access it. The funding might not be there, but they do have access to mental health apps. And mental health apps have been shown to be supportive. However, they're even more supportive when they're used in conjunction with counselors, therapists, or other mental health supports, such as peer counseling. As you heard earlier, there's a number of international actions currently on AI, including here in Canada, with Bill C-27, which looks to ensure that AI does not result in serious harm to individuals. We need to continuously monitor and assess AI in the field of mental health. In the EDUCAUSE Horizon Report 2023, they did have a section on AI integration in higher education. And they pointed out a number of concerns, but also the recommendation that we really have to monitor AI and consider how it's being used to improve students' experiences. My research, along with the research team, including graduate student Alia Raymond, are looking at digital wellness. And the more we see the integration of AI into the mental health field within post-secondary institutions, then we really need to counter that with more digital wellness training for students and staff, which looks at developing a healthy relationship with technology and knowing how to use it in ways that enhances our well-being and doesn't hinder our well-being. So to summarize, based on our research to date, and this is still ongoing, the current research, but we have started to see a number of research recommendations come out with AI and post-secondary student mental health. First is AI can really benefit and support post-secondary institutions that are stretched, that are trying to provide better, more timely supports to students. So for example, being able to do screening and identify risks, intake assessments, provide quick feedback, and connect to resources in the community, within the school, and conduct regular check-ins. We need to continue to monitor AI use and impacts in real time. We know research can be slow, but if we are going to conduct research on how AI technologies impact students' well-being, then we need to do it in a very timely manner. And if we're noticing things that need to be changed, we have to be able to make those changes quickly within these institutions, so that we have to be able to sort of get past that red tape that might hold us up sometimes, because to be ethically responsible to students, we have to make changes quickly. We also need to keep tracking for evidence-based interventions. And so conduct the research on AI technologies to see if it's evidence-based. Are they working? Are they supporting students short-term and long-term? We also need to set realistic expectations. We can use AI to enhance, perhaps not to replace, although we're not quite sure yet. The research is still new. It's such a new field. We need to keep conducting that research and monitoring, but really set realistic expectations, recognize those limitations, but understand the benefits AI can bring and utilize that. So I thank you for attending today and exploring in this webinar the connection between AI and post-secondary institutions and student well-being. If you have any further questions at all around the research that we're doing, you can reach out to us at the Mental Health in the Digital Age Lab at the Faculty of Education, Ontario Tech University. And again, I thank you very much for being here today.
And thank you for that, Jennifer. I'll just continue, and you'll be here till the end, where we'll do a Q&A session together. So feel free to ask any questions you might have to Jennifer in the chat, and both me and Jennifer will return to the questions. So let me just give you a little bit of a deep dive on, we are just one of the vendors that Jennifer spoke about, who is doing investment in this field, trying to support students, but also being aware of the risk and the potential red tape areas that there exist within AI. So let me jump in a little bit. Just a quick intro on who we are. So we are a Danish company, and we work with 15 institutions now across Europe, and working on student well-being and providing intervention. So that's where we are. We have quite a significant data set providing information about student well-being. So I'll give you a little bit insights on those. So just a quick backstory about where we started and the potential in AI within this field. So we started out by wanting to improve student well-being by asking questions and acting on the feedback. And if you look at traditional evaluation questions and end of semester surveys, well-being, inclusion and diversity, well-being surveys sent out to students, there is this problem, if you look at the axis, that there is the high effort from the institution. So to review all the data, do the required changes, and then improving the malleable factors around the students, or the things that can actually be changed around students, is quite significant. And students are not really willing to participate in surveys because, as you see at the bottom here, the impact of the individual student who provide the feedback is very, very limited. So it provides a general problem that it's not really effective just to ask surveys, provide feedback, and do the changes. So we tried to change that to come up with this concept of micro surveys or pulse check-ins, to ask a fewer set of very relevant questions depending on the student's journey, and then provide that data to the institution for them to make changes. And that works better, but it's still very little effect on the student that provided the feedback, because it requires still a lot of effort from the institution to do the actual changes to the environment or working. And one of the things is that everything is depending on anonymous feedback here. So to do actual changes for a student can be quite hard with that. So we added another feature 2 years ago. We called it follow-up explainer. So we started to play around with what is the power of just asking the right question to the student. So we experienced that by asking a set of questions, we could see that in itself would have an effect on the student's ability to take action, to search for help, or find an internship, or invest in the community, or be a part of other students. So by asking a series of questions that was really relevant for the student would nudge them in the right direction. So that's where we took Student Pulse a little bit further. And then we started to play around, could we maybe ask questions and then provide self-help or support based on the question? And this is actually where Student Pulse is right now. So we are working to provide immediate interventions based on a set of questions and the feedback of the student, and then really provide them. The thing about this is that it's rather limited in terms of technology. It's rather strict, I would say, in sense of we have to connect the interventions based on a fixed set of questions and feedback. And where AI has the potentiality is what Jennifer just called pattern recognition and natural language processing. So because of the data that we collect from the students through Student Pulse, we have so many patterns, we have a lot of written information, feedback from students, that if we use AI to identify patterns and do sentiment analysis, understanding the emotions behind the text, we'll be able to both use what we call personalized guidance, so do better in terms of assessment, what is the right intervention this particular student need, and then use a very important part of machine learning, that is reinforced learning. So ask the students to provide feedback on how well is our AI model actually performing. So the investments that we are doing in that is to do pattern recognition, understanding language, and then providing better interventions. And that can both be in an assessment, what do students actually need, but also just patterns and recommendations across the different. So this is the direction. And the thing about this is that it puts a lot less pressure on the casework, as Jennifer were describing, at the university or post-secondary, and also puts a lot higher impact on the specific student. So that's really where the direction that we are taking it. So Student Pulse is essentially like you check in, we ask a few questions around personal, academic, and social. We have a set of questions about equality, diversity, and inclusion. And based on that, we want to make sure that the recommendations are based on a pattern and sophisticated model of AI that really understands this specific student with the set of feedback that we receive. And if we don't understand it, we could ask a series of follow-up questions generated by AI to better support their needs. And what is very important here is also one of the things that you just said, Jennifer. I don't believe that AI will, I think it will enhance, but it's really to provide access to human resources in terms of support and interventions, and not to just be overly dependent on it. At least that's not the direction we're going. It's to take the existing resources that is available at the university or for the general population around the students, and integrate that in, and making sure that through self-assessment and awareness, you are signposted to the different applications or tools that you could need as a student. So that's the direction that we are taking it. And as I said in the beginning, one of the things that we received is a grant support to do further investments or development in our AI. And one of the things that we will start with is to ensure that all the questions that we ask is based on solid evidence. Like, is it the right questions, and the recommendations on interventions, are they founded in great research? And we will partner with a research university on this to ensure that we both have a good starting point from the research that or the questions that we are asking, but also over a longer term to understand if the interventions that our machine or AI model is recommending is actually working. And then we will start to do a training set on the data about AI intervention training to see patterns and language processing to understand the very specific needs of the students. And with the data set we already have, we have the opportunity to be very specific on understanding what is the needs of any student. And it could both be a student struggling, but it could also be high achieving students that want more and have any opportunity to just have additional resources. We want to include reinforced learning, so to be able to provide feedback from the students about our recommendations to improve our model over time. And the last one is what we call an emergency intervention system. So today, our system is completely based on anonymous feedback. We don't know who the students are. We think that is very important, both in terms of privacy, but also to do great recommendations. It's important to have this distance. But one of the things that might come very important here is if somebody is potentially suicidal or is struggling with stress or depression, or even making threats about school shootings or similar, we want to make sure that we can provide timely interventions to that. And we haven't developed this yet, but the system that we're planning to do is maybe to start logging immediately, provide chat, or provide other means of resources to engage with the students if there is a specific pattern of high risk that we want to engage with. So this is direction that we are driving student polls in terms of our AI investment over the next 2 years to provide better interventions and understanding of student needs. And let's take a little bit a quick look at the European Union, the AI Act, and some of the compliance that needs to be in place, and yeah, I'll cover that. I'm not a compliance expert here, but as a company that is venturing into this field, we pay close attention to understand how do we comply and make sure that we make this safe. So let me just quickly go over that. So on June 14th, there was a draft that is approved by the Parliament, and there will be some work done now with the European Intelligence Act to ensure that it's approved and then phased in. And I don't think it will be before 2025 before it's live. And there's a few things there that as institutions are working with students that you need to pay close attention to if you're venturing into the space of AI within the institution. And there's 4 levels that the European Union decided. There is the unacceptable risk systems, there is high risk systems, limited risk, and minimal risk. And those 4 systems, there is a difference between the compliance and the requirements, both for institutions and vendors, to ensure that these systems are safe, non-biased for humans that uses these systems. And if we focus on the high-risk system first, because there's a lot of work going into systems that can help here, but any system that you as an institution are using for determining access, that could be intake assessment of students, assignment of courses, or the ability to advance, or programs evaluating learning outcomes, anything related to that will have an impact on the student's future, either to be able to study or advance in the studies, it seems very high risk. Because if the systems are not safe or are making poor judgment, it will have a significant impact on the student's future. So any system that falls in that category has some high compliance requirements in terms of it needs to be registered, it needs to have risk assessment. There's a whole set of requirements in those systems that you would need to comply to and ask the vendors about. And if we look at the limited risk systems, those are chatbots, emotion recognition systems, so systems that work more to enhance, I would even say, as Jennifer described it, to understand students' experiences, provide them with feedback, but it will not have a major impact on the ability to study or advance, but it's more an enhancement or an opportunity to have a better student experience or have interventions, recommendations. The most important part of that in terms of regulation is that it needs to be very, very transparent that this is based on machine learning. So when students are engaging with systems in this category, it needs to be very transparent that they're engaging with a machine or AI system and not just a human, but not a human in the other end. So it's it needs to be transparent that it's a computer essentially that they're interfacing with. And Student Pulse is within the limited risk category. So in essence, it means that when students are checking in, we will be very transparent that you are interfacing with a AI system, and the AI system will provide you with recommendations, but you should be aware that it's generated by a computer, which can be very, very good at it, but still you need to pay attention that it's a computer. So those are the two, I would say, most important distinguished or differences between high-risk systems and limited risk systems. And with that in mind, I just think I would want to conclude a little bit faster than expected, but I don't think anybody has any problems with that. But we would really encourage every one of you to ask any questions, and I would have Jennifer back online, and then have a little bit of Q&A and questions around any questions you might have for Jennifer or me as a vendor in this space. So yeah, welcome back, Jennifer. There you go. So there is one question here, and I let me just check if your sound is okay, Jennifer. Could you just say something?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
You're back there, great. Okay. So Brad asked if I can share insights on how our chatbots are trained to recognize and respond to various mental health issues specific to young people, such as anxiety, depression, or self-harm ideation. And yeah, so let me just start by saying that at least I did know that Jennifer were talking about chatbots in terms of recognition of some of these things. Student Pulse is not based on a generative AI model, which means it's not a chatbot. It's essentially, so we ask questions in the 0 till 10 range, and then we will ask for follow-up feedback, and then the recommendations will be based on recommendations to interventions and not written feedback. And that reduces, so our training set for that is also based on not generative language. It's based on numbers and recommendations to numbers. So there is essentially what will happen in our training set is that we will go through thousands of the data points we have already on feedback, and then we would label that to what recommendation would we want to provide to the students based on that training set. And then we will have the machine learning model or AI model to do similar recommendations, and then we will start to fine tune by saying this was a good recommendation, this was not a good recommendation. So it's basically where we start with the AI investments that we are doing. I hope that answered the question. Is there any other?
Sorry, Gordon, can I just add to that so it's a good how you distinguish the difference there too, just for the question. But so you do have that difference when it comes to recognizing students in distress. You do have the generative side of it where it's looking, the AI is looking for patterns, so pattern recognition in words and language to identify. But then you have those sort of timely, individualized check-ins, like this is where Student Pulse is, where it's not looking for specific patterns, but it's looking for in that moment what the person is experiencing, like you said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel, and matching with services. And that we do see that distinction when we do a review of the AI and mental health technologies that are out there. Is some are based on generative, and some are based on individualized in the moment feedback. And they're both, there's benefits to both that we're seeing, but I'm glad that came up about that difference.
Yeah. And could you, so at least when you look at ChatGPT and these, red tape and idealization of self-harm, it's a very hard, it's very, very hard to make these generative models safe around every specific topic that potentially could be harmful. So it's a very hard, and I don't think we have the capacity, at least we would have to rely on somebody else's capacity to provide that understanding of general generative language recognition instead. So we're trying to make, I would say, a little more simple, but also a little more safe when it comes to understanding more of patterns in terms of numbers, and then providing interventions to that instead of providing textual written feedback to anybody about, well-being and health issues, which just from my own experience with ChatGPT can be very, very hard to be on point with. I would like you, if there's no questions from the participants here, I would like to ask you a question, Jennifer, which is a little more general on the AI risks that I do know that you were, you have spoken before. Where do you see the most risk coming from in terms of maybe the opposite of improving mental health, like in harassment and bullying, and where should institutions pay really attention to the risks of these new technologies coming in and providing high risk for students? Where do you see that?
Mm-hmm. Well, interestingly, we just at the lab there, we just wrote a research paper on deepfakes, the use of deepfakes as a way for cyberbullying amongst post-secondary students. That there, for example, was a number of cases where deepfake technology was used for cyberbullying incidences. So that kind of opens up this conversation around, addressing cyberbullying, which really can cause trauma. And a lot of research shows cyberbullying actually may create even greater trauma than some face-to-face bullying that may happen. And we do know that bullying and cyberbullying is actually a reality even within post-secondary institutions. It doesn't stop often in high school, but it does carry on. And I think that is a brand new field that still really needs to be explored, is how can AI be used to prevent it from happening, but also support those that are experiencing it. We've been using a platform in my private practice. We run therapy groups for individuals that have been victimized from bullying and cyberbullying, all ages, older adults in the workplace to younger children. And we are using some different technology tools that help support students in the area of self-expression, because that's very helpful when people have the opportunity to express what they're feeling and what they're going through, connect with others that have gone through similar experiences. But we haven't looked at yet the use of AI for the prevention. That's not something we've gone into yet, but definitely to support those that are experiencing it.
Yeah.
And I just see Jonathan has a question there too.
Yeah, so,
and I don't know if that's Jonathan for me or for
he writes in regards to student pulse and AI in general. Important and distinguishing different student groups, for example, students with mental health disabilities and others. And the experience that we have, at least, is that our general framework of asking to student well-being is based on a concept of a framework based on social, academic, and personal well-being. And below that, we have created a framework of equality, diversity, and inclusion. And that includes, a potential to identify students within those themes that might be in, disabilities or mental health or international students or people with another socioeconomic background. So our framework of questions to understand students are based on that pre-assumption that we can ask them within that. And when we do that, we can then, based on the framework and set of questions we have, better support and provide them with recommendations of interventions or things they potentially could do to improve. So that is so when you're asking about our experience in that is important. We need to understand, to have questions that are directed to a theme for us to be able to provide the right recommendations. So that's a part of our training set to improve on that, and not just ask a generalized well-being question. That can be great, but asking more specific also make the training and intervention recommendation a lot better. I hope that answered the question.
Can I add on to that one as well?
Yeah,
that question from Jonathan. Jonathan, it wasn't on the list there, the recommendations, that it is in our report too, is, as we move forward and see the advancements of AI, and more mental health programs coming out and tech tools to support students, is really encouraging individuals to be working with and organizations, right? So, if a university was to develop something to support students' mental health, AI related, is to really embed the knowledge and experience of mental health professionals as well. To support not only the creation, but the delivery and the monitoring, to make it evidence-based in that way as well. And that's great, is to base it off of evidence-based knowledge and research, to track it, conduct research. Like you said, with Student Pulse, you're doing research now and basing it off of theories and research, actual evidence-based research. And that is sort of something we're going to see in the future. Is, back in the 1980s and 90s, we had what were called industrial psychologists who worked with companies and organizations to help them design things effectively based on psychological principles. And I think what we're going to see in the future is really the need for digital psychologists who inform the creation of technology based on psychological principles, especially if we want to reap the benefits and mitigate the risks and use it to enhance the human experience and mental health.
Great. Thank you. If there is any other questions, feel free, and Jonathan, you're welcome to ask any more questions, but thank you for that. And yeah, so I just think I would want to conclude it here by saying that, there is great promise in this field, all AI in general, but also in the mental health and well-being field of students. You should be cautious in terms of understanding the biases of it, and start by ensuring that you understand the difference between, has this significant impact of the student's future, or is this something that we can safely produce to or share with the students as more as a personal enhancement to recommend interventions. I think there is a great distinguish there that you need to take and understand that. And outside of that, I just want to thank you, Jennifer, a lot for sharing your practical work and research. And everybody for attending the webinar. So feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions, and have a great day, all of you.
That's great. And thank you. Thanks for everyone for attending.